Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Nun Zayin Seif base, and we're carrying on with the same theme of yesterday, and that is a guy is pouring his waste, his extra water, out of his chotzer, and the concern is that it's going to go into Rishus Harabim, and therefore he'll do a havara from a Rishus Hayochid to a Rishus Harabim. So that's what we're discussing. So says the Mechaber in Seif base, Biv shemechusa arba amas. A biv is a drain. Shemechusa arba amas b'meshech b'Rishus Harabim. The first 4 amas of the drain, which has gone into Rishus Harabim, is covered. V'yesh be'arba al arba, and it's got an area, dimensions of 4x4. If you look in the picture there in footnote number 7, we've got a picture there. The guy's got his little house and he's got his chotzer, and he's got a drain there. So he's pouring into the drain, and it's going out into the Rishus Harabim. And the first 4 amas of that Rishus Harabim is covered. So can you see that? That it's although it's in the Rishus Harabim, it's considered dalit. It's covered, and therefore it hasn't got the status of Rishus Harabim, as we'll see. So mutar lishbach, you're allowed to pour when you're standing in your own chotzer. You can pour into this drain. Even into the actual drain itself. Or even in the summer months, where you want your chotzer to be clean. Even though they immediately go out of your chotzer. So long as this the material of the drain pipe is not of wood, because the water can't be absorbed in an 8 silain. Because again, what's the whole svara? Like we said yesterday, the svara is that the material of this drain will absorb the water, and it's not inevitable that the water is going to go beyond outside into the Rishus Harabim. It will be absorbed there in the spot. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah till there. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkot and Tezayin, Biv hu charetz. It's some sort of channel, some sort of piping. Ha'asu lekaleach shoifchin shebechotzer the Rishus Harabim, which takes the excess water out from the chotzer into the Rishus Harabim. Arba amas b'meshech. Now the first 4 amas, when it goes out into the Rishus Harabim, is covered. A stretch of 4 amas. It's covered like in the picture. And it's 4 amas wide. Like we discussed yesterday, even if it was like say 2 amas wide and it's stretched out 18 amas, so long as there's an area of 16 square amas, because in this amount of area, 16 square amas, it will be able to absorb the sosayim, the 2 sa'ah of water that a person that a person uses every single day. So therefore we're makel, and we allow the guy to pour into this drain, which is in his chotzer. In the same way as we said yesterday, that a person can pour the sosayim, the 2 sa'ah of water, into his small chotzer, as long as it's 4x4, because it will be absorbed there. Well, so too over here, he can pour into the biv, even though it goes out into the Rishus Harabim, because the first 4 amas of that biv, which is in the Rishus Harabim, is going to absorb the water. Lachutz, says Mishnah Berurah Sifkot and Yudches, kivin shemechavim behedger sheitz lachutz. I've jumped the line. Given to who since he doesn't intend the water to go outside, and therefore, even if it does go outside, we're not really worried about it. Yutes, what's this going on? Yes, so long as that the material is absorbent and it's not made of the wood. Shelo yehei, says the Mishnah Berurah, you've got a new test. Because if it was made out of wood, have a mechavim behedger sheitz lachutz, because then it's as if you're intending to expel the water outside into the Rishus Harabim. Va'afilu machazik mea amma also, even if it's a massive biv that holds mea amma, it'll still be also, because it's made of wood. It's not going to absorb the material, and it will go out into Rishus Harabim. Because if it was made out of stone, because in between the small pieces of stone there's cement and earth, and therefore it will absorb in that. Okay, so that's the idea of this seif. Let's carry on the Mechaber. Ula Rambam, I'm 2 lines at the end. Ula Rambam, afilu haya Orach abiv ayatzinu mea amo, lo yishbech al piv b'mos hachamo, ela shofech chutz labiv vehem yordin labiv. The Rambam doesn't allow you to pour directly into the drain, but he says you pour around it and then it will go in. Why not? Even if it's 100 amos long. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chaf Aleph, Ratzolema she'orech habiv b'chotzehu mea amo. It's a very long drain. And therefore it will certainly absorb all the water which is in the ground. It will. There's no concern. We still say, according to the Rambam, it will still be also because at the end of the day, it's going out mikoicho through your efforts into the Rosh Hashanah, and therefore he'll only allow you to do it around the biv, not directly into the biv. However, we are generally a makel, like the first opinion, that you're allowed to throw this water directly into the biv. Oyhat tzinor, or the tzinor mikri mashimanichin al hagag is like a drain on the roof. And from there it goes out into the Shabbat. Whether it's a drain underground or whether it's overground from the roof, one's a biv and that's underground, that's on the floor, and a tzinor is generally from a higher point, from the gag. Okay, so that's Sif Beis. So just to summarize what we said, just like we said yesterday in Sif Beis, that a person is allowed to pour the sosayim, the 2 sort of water that a person ordinarily uses every day, is allowed to pour it in a chotzer, which is dalad by dalad, because the assumption is that it will be absorbed into that area. Well, so too in Sif Beis, he's allowed to pour it into the biv, or according to Rambam, around the biv, and it will go from there outside, because the first 4 amos of the biv, like in the picture, are covered, and therefore is not doing it directly into the Rosh Hashanah, because those first 4 amos are not considered Rosh Hashanah properly. Okay, Gimel. Says the Mechaber, B'med var mamurim, when is the above true? When the water goes out into Rosh Hashanah as per the picture. But if it was not a Rosh Hashanah there, but it was just a Carmelis, then then there's no problem whatsoever, because it's going out into a Carmelis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, let's just do it till there. Sifkot and Chof Gimel. B'med var mamurim, zeu siyum divrei Rambam. This is the conclusion of the Rambam. I.e., when the Rambam says you can't pour it directly into the biv, you should put it around it, that's only if there's a Rosh Hashanah on the other side. But if there's a Carmelis on the other side, even the Rambam would agree you can pour it directly into the biv. Says the Mishnah Berurah, zesiyum divrei Rambam v'gam ledidon nafka mina b'zen. Even for us, who allow you anyway to pour into the biv, there will be a nafka mina, dahainu, im biv hoy shalates. For us, i.e. the first opinion that the Mechaber brought in Sif Beis, if the biv, the drain, is made out of 8s, i.e. it will not absorb this water, and it will therefore certainly go out, that's also even according to the first opinion, cited in the previous Sif. But they would agree that if your chotzer is next to a karmelis, mutar afilu b'shel eitz. That will be mutar even if it is made out of eitz. V'atam b'chol zeh, and the reason is kim de'ena shefech behedgel karmelis rak shu ba mikoichei svirlon de koichei bekarmelis lo gozru. When it's coming through your efforts, koichei into a karmelis, we are not gozer. Okay, now back to the top. Says the Ramah Hago v'yesh oimrim de'ein chiluk ben karmelis shus rabbim. And there are those who say there is no chiluk between a Karmelis and Rabbim. Let's do Mishnah Berurah Chaf Daled v'yeshem de'in chiluk. After anakdin and ledin dafil b'shekashamayim yotzim nishus Rabbim mutzah b'biv. Even though we hold that when it goes out even to a Rishus Rabbim, it's allowed. Or kamosh shukasavna b'sif kot and Chaf Aleph, like we said above. And we call malkum nafkaminak mishayeshomrim hazel in silin shaleit. There is a nafkamina when the silin is made out of wood. Or kamosh shukasavna b'sif kot and Chaf Gimel, like we just said. Or for example, if the biv is not covered like it is in the picture, but if it's a karmelis, then it would be okay. According to the Shulchan Aruch, it would be okay, and according to the Yesh Omrim, it would not be. The according to the Mechaber previously, even if it's not got 4x4 amas, and therefore there's a likelihood that it won't absorb, it will spill out. If it's going into a karmelis, that would be okay. However, Yesh Omrim Hazeh also, because they treat the karmelis like a Rosh Hashanah, and therefore in all of those situations it would not be allowed. Umashanishim Bahago Beis Yosef B'Shem Tosus V'Arosh, and that what we say in the sort of the round brackets after the Hagah, that this is from the Beis Yosef in the name of Tosus and Rosh. Lo niske b'Tosus Rosh le'inyan biv klal. When it says it's referring to Tosus and Rosh, they're not, Tosus and the Rosh themselves are not referring to a biv at all. Teheim poiskim b'biv lahakel, because they personally hold a biv lahakel. Afil b'smuch l'shrabim, even if it's smuch l'shrabim. Marak l'fi divreihem nishmu gam l'inyonein. It's just that we're inferring their shitta, as it were, sort of superimposing in our situation. Okay, fine. Good, let's carry on. It says the Ramah, top line, the dafka karmelis sheiteicha. Now, when do we say that that the ein chiluk bein karmelis l'shrabim, that is dafka karmelis, which is in the city. It's a michlef v'shrabim atzma, because you can confuse it with a regular shrabim. Afilu bizman hazeh, the less lom shrabim. Even though nowadays, generally speaking, it's unlikely to have a Rosh Hashanah, but if you've got a karmelis which is outside the city, shari, even that stricter opinion would agree that that type of karmelis, a karmelis outside the city, and there's less likely to confuse it with a Rosh Hashanah, or a chotzer she'ena mureves, it would be okay. Ve'ir hamukefes chayma, v'lo irvaba, if you've got a city which is walled, and there's no erev, kachotzer she'ena mureves domi, it's like a chotzer she'ena mureves. Okay, it says the Mishnah till there. Afilu bizman hazeh, the less. What does that mean? Ledas hasoivrim, de bo'in and dafka shishim ribu boikin bay. Because there is, of course, that opinion we started off with all the way back in the beginning of Chelik Daled, the opinion which says that for it to be a Rishus Harabim, you need Shishim Ribuy, 600,000 people traversing this area. And that's quite unlikely. Mikol Mokum, nevertheless, Gozrinan, Otu Ir Gedola, she is Damin Shishim Ribuy, we make a Gezerah, Otu, a large city which does have that amount. The chotze in which the biv, this drain is, or you've got a very small chotze which hasn't got dalad, which is next to a chotze which is not mu'urav, when you pour out the water, it will go into that chotze. You're not pouring it directly, it's just coming mikoichai. We're not geyser koichai in karmelis. And therefore you're allowed to pour it even into the biv. And then because the truth is it has got, it's mukaf, and therefore it has got mechitzas. It's just that you didn't build an eruv, but lemaisa it has got mechitzas around it. Okay, let's just finish off. Ve'im hatziner lemaila me'asara. If this tzinner, this pipe, is higher than 10 tefachim from the ground, she'ovrim hamayim derech mokum patur lekarmelis, and therefore it's going from a mokum patur because it's more than 10 tefachim from the ground. It's going from a mokum patur into a karmelis. Then yesh lahakel v'chein ikka, because always from a mokum patur to a karmelis is much easier, and therefore you can be mekel v'chein ikka. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Chovches ve'im hatziner rotzolema shahatziner hamekalech mayim bekarmelis. This pipe, which is the water is going out into a karmelis, hulamala me'asara v'imkein over mayim derech makom patur, and therefore it's going by way of a makom patur. Mutar lishpech afilu mischavin sheyedu mayim lekarmelis. Then you can do it lechatchila, even if your intention is to pour from the makom patur throughout into the karmelis. V'hainu afilu ledas hamachmir mile'el b'simin shin memvav soif sif aleph derech makom patur hacha deloizarik lu mamish elekoicha. You're just sort of spilling the water out through this makom patur into the karmelis. Yesh lahakel v'chein ikka ayim b'prima godim shemesalida kol hagaka. It's going on the whole comment of the Ramah, v'af reish dvar, even the beginning of his words. So let's just summarize what we've done today. That we said essentially this whole simon that we're talking about. Chazal assume that a person needs 2 sa'ah of water every day, and therefore in the summer months he doesn't want to pour out the water into the chotze. He wants it to go out of his chotze, not to sully, not to dirty his chotze, and therefore Chazal were worried that if you've got your abutting a Rosh Hashanah, it will spill out into there. There's a problem of hotzah. But if you've got a chotze, a 4x4, we assume that amount of water will absorb into the chotze, and there's not a problem. If it's less than 4x4, then it would be a problem, and we don't allow him to pour it out. What we're dealing with today is when you've got a biv, a drain coming out from your chotzer into the Rishus Rabim. So we said in Sif Beis that if the first 4 amas are covered, then it would be okay to pour out, according to the Rambam, not directly in, but around it. And then we said in Sif Gimel that when is that true? When it's dafka into Rishus Rabim. But if it's into a Carmelis, we're much more lenient because you're going from Rosh Yochid into a Carmelis. In Koiche Bekarmelis, we are not Geizer. And there's a Yeshayim who says there's no chiluk between a Carmelis and a Rosh Rabim. And the general consensus seems to be Yesh Lahakel, to be lenient in this situation. Okay, say that. We'll leave it there.